Welcome. You're listening to the Good Girls Don't podcast with Ashley Ray
and Verity Mansfield.
This is the podcast where we smash those rules that we've been taught to follow both as men and women and burn the damn rule book. We're tackling the big issues and the issues nobody wants to talk about, and we'll be fiercely feminist about it.
This podcast is about inspiration, education, compassion, and being the change that you need to see in this world. This podcast is for the trailblazers, the freedom fighters, and the soul igniters, and all the women just like you who are ready to break the good girl rules and be heard.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Australia and its First Nations people on which this podcast is produced and consumed. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. We're gonna sing revolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
Hey everyone, it's Ashley here. I'm really excited about this episode that Verity and I recorded with Marie Louise. It's a really great conversation about life when you're infertile, and it is a bit of a left of field conversation. But before we get into this, I'm popping in really quickly because I have a little bit of favour to ask you and some good news to share with you. First of all, Verity and I are really, really excited and so thrilled to see that the Good Girls Don't podcast is now streaming on every habitable continent on the planet. We have listeners on every continent, and we're in over 25 countries, and it keeps growing every week. So thank you for listening from around the world, from countries like Bulgaria, Kenya, the Philippines, the UK, Ireland, everywhere. We're so thrilled to have you as part of the revolution. The next thing I would love to share with you is that Verity and I have a survey. We really would love your help to continue to create this podcast and make it the best we can be. Now, currently, Verity and I foot the bill for this out of our own pockets, and we would love to find a way that we can do this so that it's not costing us personally out of our own pockets to run this show, so that we can actually make it a bit more self-sustaining, and so that we can actually do a bit more with it. So we would love your input, your feedback, and your ideas on how we can do this and what sits right with you guys, what you are loving about this show, and how we can make it even more awesome. So if you really want to help us do that, which pretty please do, I'm just going to give you the link to do this, and I'm also going to put it in the show notes. So if you go to bit.ly/, in lowercase now, GGD pod survey, you will be taken to a quick survey page that we've whipped up. It'll only take a few minutes to complete, but the results will really impact how we go forward with the Good Girls Don't podcast in 2020. Holy crap, can you believe it's nearly the new year? Okay, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. Verity and I deeply appreciate you. We are thankful for you. This podcast has surpassed even our wildest dreams of where this was going to go, and we hope it will continue to do so. We hope that we keep dreaming up what we're going to do with it next, and it just smashes that right out of the ballpark. So thank you. You mean so much to us, and have an amazing day or night wherever you are in the world. Okay, so we have Marie Louise with us today, and we're going to talk about something that's a little bit left of field. We're talking about what happens when you can't have a kid, when you can't be a mum, when you can't have a family because you're infertile or for some reason you just can't. Hey, Marie Louise, how you doing?
Hello, how you going?
No, you're so welcome. We thought this was such an important conversation because, there's this concept out there, like in order to be a woman, the thing that defines us is our ability to give birth. And yet when you can't do that, if it's your biology or if there's been trauma or whatever, like then how do we redefine ourselves as females, and what does it do to, I guess, our emotional well-being. But also I think what's so important about this is for women who do have children, about the lack of insensitivity there is for women in your position. And Marie Louise and I have known each other for a few years, and we've talked about this before. And I mean, you've got some pretty insane stories, which we'll get into. But when Ashley and I were talking the other day and I mentioned you, she was just like, hell yes, let's talk about this. Like, it's such an important conversation. I think this is why it's so perfect for this podcast. Like, this podcast is all about talking about all the real shitty things that go on that women don't talk about.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. And this is what I've sort of cottoned on to, that there's a huge lack of support for the women who don't fit the mould and who aren't doing the thing that we were born to do, and which sets us aside from men. Because the main difference between us and them is our ability to bear a child. And yet many of us can't. And what I've discovered is that there are a million success stories out there, but there aren't many like mine that don't end in having a baby, because women aren't willing to tell the story. When they've tried, they've been sort of bashed on the head and told to be quiet and we don't talk about that, or they just don't feel that there's support. So they keep quiet about it. But I kind of want to break down that door and bring it all out into the open, and hopefully it'll give other women the courage to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think there's that thing as well, like Ashley mentioned this before, which I think is really important. Like, if we talk about infertility, then a lot of us will go, well, there's always IVF, or there's egg donation, or there's sperm donation, or there's adoption. So It's like brushed off like, well, you've got other options. Like, is it really a big problem? And I think that's really insensitive. I think it's actually a really narrow-minded approach. And like Ashley was saying, there's so many fertility coaches out there. But what happens when you get to the point where you're like, you know what, enough's enough. Like, this isn't going to happen to me for me. I don't want to use someone else's sperm or egg, and I don't want to adopt someone else's child. Like, what happens then, and where is that support? Which is why what I think you're doing is so important. Like, we need that voice. There has to be that option that's, you know, being put out there as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think the thing is that the fertility coaches are doing a great job and there's an absolute need for them. But I feel there's an emphasis on women who are in couples. Mostly supports couples, and there's a lot of support for either person. And having that support person is great. But then there are all the women who are single, who are going about their days and their nights and are heartbroken because they are infertile and they know they can't do it. Sometimes their marriage ended because they can't do it and they weren't fulfilling their role as a woman and as a wife. And there are plenty of women who really didn't even get to that point. Maybe they already found out they were infertile and kind of had this, nobody's going to want me because I'm not going to be able to do the job sort of mentality. No matter what, I didn't find anybody out there really who could support somebody like me. And I've been infertile since 2011. It's really only been this year that I've felt comfortable talking about it on the whole. I've told a few people. Back then, my family sort of knew. But when I told them recently again, they were all shocked. And it's like, well, that just goes to show that I didn't deliver it in a way that you remembered and you took a notice of. Or I just kind of mentioned it in passing because I was trying to deal with it as well. And I didn't have the tools or the vocabulary or the emotion because I was trying to keep a lid on that shit. Whatever it was, I couldn't really give them the right information either. And now that I have told people, this year I've either lost friends, I've had to shut down friendships, I've had family members who are saying, don't blame me, don't blame us, it's not our fault you can't have children. And it's like, whoa, nobody's blaming anybody. And that's the thing that I want to really get across to parents in particular, that we're not trying to take anything away from anybody, but I am trying to give a voice and a place in the world for the women who can't do what you've done.
Yeah, and I think as well, in your position, like, you have so much right to be angry and to be frustrated, have that space to feel, I'm going to say to feel the shame, but it's not shame you should feel. It's just those pressures from society that said you should be doing this. Like, if you look at
Patriarchy.
marriage, yeah, the patriarchy.
Who
Like,
said
if
that?
you look at marriage, if you look at patriarchal marriage, it's a business contract, right? It's like, great, I'll give you money and you give me a baby. Like, that is, you know, traditionally where marriage came from. It was like solidifying, you know, the blood.
It was land.
Yeah.
It was about land and hierarchy and family being passed down, of things being passed down from family to family, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
But is this also not like how the role of motherhood and how we really epitomize it as well, that goes along with this stupid marriage contracty type thing, and how we really glorify the fact that to be worthwhile as anything as a woman, you have to be a mum. You cannot be anything else. You have no value otherwise.
So they're the steps, right? You go to school, you meet a guy, you get married, you have a baby, and apparently that's done. That's it.
I mean, that's literally
Job
how I
done.
was raised.
Don't worry about doing anything else with your life. Tick the boxes.
Yeah, and modify all of your behavior so that you will be pleasing for a partner so that you can go off and have more babies and propagate.
Yeah.
There's no contingency plan.
And that's something that, depending on how old you are, that's what your parents were raised to do. So
Yeah.
kind of in this period at the moment where the parents that we had were raised that way, and all they really knew to do was pass along their beliefs to us. So I'm not pointing a finger at my parents. That's just what they knew.
Yeah.
That's how they were raised. They, you know, it wasn't important in some families and some cultures for women to get an education. You finished school and that was it. You got married and that was your life. They also didn't have the options that we have now. So much more available to us than they did at the time because of technology and evolution, and everything much newer and more sparkly than it was when our parents were at school 40 or 50 years ago or growing up.
And we still have that bullshit. There's still so many companies, and I've worked for them in the past, where it's like, oh, if we hire a woman, she's just going to go off and have a baby. Like, it's like, you don't know, first of all, if she's married, if she wants to get married, if she even wants a baby. But there is just that, you know, that thing about, great, if you hire a woman, you know, she's just going to go off and have a baby. Like, that still exists today, that mentality in the corporate world. And, you know, generations, like my mum was one of 7 children, and my grandmother didn't believe that girls were worth educating. You know, they're just going to go off and make babies. So it's not that long ago that these attitudes are still here.
Yeah. And that's where it becomes difficult for people of that generation, and even our siblings who were raised by the same people that we were raised, to understand that maybe a woman doesn't want to have children.
Yeah.
Maybe she does want to have a career, or she wants to travel, or whatever she chooses to do, which is A-OK. But then there's the other side, and it's like, what do you mean you can't? And, well, we don't know what to do with that information. So we'll just wave our hands in the air and just keep on going and hope that you'll just pick yourself up and you'll be fine.
You'll magically be able to have a baby in like 2 years.
Oh, and let me tell you another story. Yeah, let me tell you about a miracle story of somebody, you know, a 72-year-old woman in India who had a baby. Why don't I just perpetuate the hope for you, and why don't we just keep that going another 20 years?
Oh, yeah. Because people want to give you like that hope, but sometimes they don't realize that it's actually quite insensitive and cruel.
I had one friend who I'm also no longer friends with, and I was friends with her for several years, and I remember a particular conversation. I was sitting here right where I am right now on the phone to her while I was doing some work, and I said, look, I just need to stop. I need to not think about this anymore. I need to move on with my life, get on with things, and start living the life that I really want to live. Now, I was in a pretty crappy job at the time, but there I was with her saying to her, my situation is such that I can't afford a baby even if I could have one. I can't have one. I need to just put it all together. The answer is I need to give up on this dream. And she was like, Marie Louise, oh my God, but you'd be such a good mum. Oh, this is terrible. I can't bear to think of you not being a mum. You love kids. Kids love you. And I'm like, you need to stop. She just kept going and kept going and kept going. And some of the things she was saying were like, but I'll help you. I'll help you support the baby. I'll help you raise the baby. And I'm like, all right, stop it right there. You live half an hour away from me. We talk like this maybe once a month. I'm not complaining. I'm cool with that. You've got a life. I've got a life. But why on earth do you think I'm going to make a decision about my life based on you saying you'll be supportive?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I cannot make decisions based on other people pledging something that they're not doing now.
Yeah. So
Especially
true.
a decision that is that big.
It's huge. And so that's the kind of conversation I've had over the years. Even when I'm saying I didn't really tell a lot of people, the people I did tell were like that. And it was almost like I was breaking their heart. And that's what I've found this year when I've become a lot more open about it. And I really feel like the people in my life are mourning what they're not going to have with me because I'm not going to have the baby.
Yeah, it's like when people want grandchildren and then they find out that their kids don't want them. And then they're like,
Yes.
but I want to be a grandmother. And it's like, wow, that's actually really selfish of you. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not a baby factory.
I have had that argument with my mother many times.
Yeah. And thank you so much for the input, Mum, but it is my life.
It's my uterus.
I have literally said those words to my mum before. I love her to pieces, but I actually remember Scott and I had only been together for like a year or two, and every time I visited her, so I was visiting maybe every fortnight or so, and she would just be like, when's the baby coming? When's the baby coming? When are the babies coming? And it got to the point where I turned around and I had to tell my mum, and I was like, can you please stop this? Because it's not fair. I'm 23. At the time I was like, oh, I'm 23. You need to stop. My life hasn't even really started yet. It's not good. Like, just stop.
That's the problem. In my dating coaching, I've been all about breaking that mold of meeting somebody and going on a few dates with them, and suddenly they're your boyfriend, and then next minute you're engaged, and the ball is rolling without you even controlling it. So I've been very clear on trying to help people realize that there are options like that. And some of that is helping the parents, because they need to know too that just because we like each other and spend a lot of time with each other doesn't mean we've ironed out what we want with our lives. And we may not be on the same page yet. We may not be at that point where we're discussing that even.
Yeah.
Give us a break. Let us live our lives.
Hell yes.
So
And
what happens then as well, like in terms of dating and infertility? Like, how do you have that conversation with other people where, like, if you're, like you were saying, a lot of stuff is aimed at women who are in relationships. So what happens with women who are out of relationships and know that they're infertile, and that then they have to have that conversation, with someone of the opposite sex who could be a potential partner? Like, how hard is that?
It's really difficult, because some of this, depending on who you are and what your story is, you may be in denial about it. I said before, I knew I was infertile since 2011. My marriage broke down in 2012, and I started dating again after that. When I first had to write my first dating profile after that, the options were things like wants children, has children, doesn't want them. And at the time I put wants, because even though I knew I was infertile, I still had that hope.
Can't have children isn't on there.
No, and nor should it be. It's a super personal thing to say. But you get guys who say, and I think I'm not good with maths, but I think I was 39 at the time or so, and they would say, oh, really nice, like if you contacted them, oh, really nice to hear from you, but you're too old for me. And I'd be like, what, 39, what do you mean too old? oh, no, I really want to have kids, and at 39, you probably can't.
Thanks for asking.
So almost in the first conversation, they're ruling you out.
Yeah.
Then there were the others who were saying, oh, so 39 and I see you haven't had kids. I bet you want to have them straight away, right? And I'm like, well, not with someone with that attitude. I'm actually going to be looking for somebody who I like, who I might fall in love with, who I might see a future with.
Yeah.
Not just any bloke who walks past. Thanks very much. So you get that kind of attitude right from the get-go. And it's only after that you go, well, I'm not really willing to have this conversation with strangers. I didn't want to justify myself. I didn't explain myself to them. I didn't really want to be thinking about it myself. I just wanted to get on with life, pick up the pieces, recover from my marriage, which ended ostensibly because of the baby thing.
Yeah.
And move on. But I'm certainly not going to move on by having that conversation with somebody. Later on, when I've met guys and I've been more involved with them, I have had the conversation, but it really takes time and it takes trust. It's not the sort of thing you want to bring up straight away. Some women might want to, and I think maybe these days when I'm a bit more used to it and a bit more willing to be serious and honest about my life, I may be more willing to do that. But at the moment, I still think it's my information to share with whoever I want to share it with. And a random stranger at that point is who I want to share it with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is not the same, but just with the similar idea that, like I met my partner online and he'd had a vasectomy and he'd had so much judgment from other women about that. And for him, it became such a sensitive issue. And for me, it was a complete non-issue. And I remember when he was like, oh, I've got something to tell you and and we've known each other for a while now and I really need to share this with you. And he kind of let me know. And I think I just cracked up laughing because for him it had built up so much, this thing that could like be a deal breaker. And I was just like, oh my God, this makes you more perfect for me.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, women are out there going, that's great. He looks like a nice guy, looks like he's got his shit together, and now I can't even do anything with him. Terrific. Yeah. So it's one less guy for them to choose from.
Yeah.
See why, but they also should respect that he's made a massive decision for himself.
Yeah.
And he knows that for a reason.
But even the women that tried to get him to change his mind and have the vasectomy reversed, you know, it was such an amazing conversation that, you know, it goes, I guess, both ways where there's such a pressure to have babies, and it doesn't have to be the norm. It doesn't have to be the accepted, you know, next tick, like box to tick, or, you know, like even like what we were saying, what happens when you can't, you know, especially when it's not your choice like that. I mean, I can't imagine not having the choice. I think, you know, choice is so important for all of us. It's that feeling of freedom. We get to make a choice. But when you don't have it, it can just feel so much more devastating, you know, because it isn't your choice.
Absolutely. I'm really curious about sort of another stereotype that plays into this, which is women ratting on their periods. And ratting's a really weird word for me to use here, but I just mean there's that thing where women really are like, oh, I wish I never got my period and blah, blah, blah. I wish it was never there. I wish I didn't have it. And it's so painful and horrible. And really, you know, that kind of, almost like I wish I wasn't fertile so I didn't have this period, so I didn't have to deal with it. And then there's that weird connection there. And it's really, really interesting how all of these weird things are playing into it, you know, the shame of our periods interlinked with our fertility, linked with all of the social crap that we're talking about. Oh my gosh, this drink is really making me a bit blunt today.
It's so funny. For anyone, obviously no one else knows this but the three of us. So Ashley's turned up with Midori. Darling Marie Louise has turned up with her cider, and for me turned up with herbal tea.
So boring. So boring. But I would like to talk about what Ashley just brought up, because that's because I don't think we haven't really spoken about that yet. This year was such a big turning point for me. I had all these years, of course, since 2011, having been diagnosed with unexplained infertility. And people often say, so what does that mean? I'm like, do you know what unexplained means?
Just put a giant question mark.
No, I'm not a doctor. They don't know either. When I find out, boy, oh boy, you'll be the last to know, because you shouldn't be asking in the first place, very likely. But all these years, with the hope, still alive, I've, of course, had my period. And it's, I don't know, there have been times when it's been fun, but there have been times when it's been uber inconvenient for my life. And considering that I was infertile, I was often wondering, why am I even having it? If my body cannot deliver, why is it taunting me and teasing? It's every freaking month, every month. And so I've had a lot of issue with that, because my body has betrayed me on a number of levels, and every bloody month. So I sort of came to terms with, even if I can't have them, I'm just going to let this play out, because maybe the universe or somebody has a plan that they haven't let me in on yet.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to just go with it. So there have been times when I have just gone with it. And then this year I started to get really bad periods. Really bad. I've been super lucky all my life. And let me tell you, I have not talked about periods as much as I have this year. With anybody. And this year they became really, really bad. And I just decided, if this is what my life is going to be from now on, I ain't having it. So I talked with a couple of friends, and some of them who I know have done other things like IUD, implant on, those sorts of things. And one of them had done the Mirena. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be done with this. I'm 40, well, I thought I was 46. Actually, I'm only 45. Blonde. I mean, I was 46. I thought, this is ridiculous. You've got to live your life. You've got to draw a line in the sand, shut the door, put a bolt on the door, do what you got to do, get on with life. Which I thought I was living, but up until this year, that's what I thought. And now suddenly I'm like, nah, I'm not. I can do more. I can do more and I can be more. And so I went up to the doctor to discuss having that done. And she said, let's just check first and see what's going on, because you haven't had these periods like this before. Let's figure out what's going on. So it turns out I had ovarian cysts. And so she booked me in for surgery. I found a gynecologist, booked in for surgery, going to get the surgery done. Ironically, the surgery is a hysteroscopy, which obviously us as Goop is like, experimental, going to look around to see what's going on. The other part is a DNC.
Oh.
DNC is, it's an abortion.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And then the third part of it was having the Mirena implanted. So that's really cool. A very cool device. It does a lot of different things, including it can minimize the onset of precancerous cells. So I was like, this is ace. I have the potential to get rid of my periods. I'm going to get rid of the pain whatever these cysts are causing, the pain that the cysts are causing. And I might actually be preventing cancer in myself in future. This is great. But then on the other hand, I'm having an abortion. So I had to get my head around the thought that all these years, this is what I've wanted to have a baby. And the day that I'm closing the door on that is the day I have an abortion, which I never would need, in the sense of I couldn't have a baby in the first place.
It's so ironic, isn't it?
It's bizarre, crazy. Absolutely bizarre. And I've had people say, yeah, but, you're just getting rid of cysts. It's like, but to do that, think about what I'm having to do. And when I went back to my doctor afterwards, he said, "Oh, great, there are no precancerous cells." I'm like, "That's terrific." And I said, "But I just had an abortion." And he's like, "Yeah?" I'm like, "I was infertile, I'm devastated, and I've just had an abortion." And he goes, "But no precancerous cells." I'm like, "Yeah, I need to go now," because he just doesn't get this.
You don't get it, yeah.
I can't, I don't have all day to explain it to this man, but, you know, how's the irony of that? And so then, ideally, I will be without period and I will have a life. Because don't they hold us back a lot of the time? I just, you know, even when they're not difficult or painful, which I've been super lucky about, I found that they have held me back. And I feel really, God, I hate to say this word, but I feel really empowered that my future will be completely limitless in that regard.
And it's
I
a
have
choice.
to plan. Yeah.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, it's a little bit different, I think, when it's not a choice and you're like, I can't stop this from happening. You're a bit you know, you have that feeling of powerlessness to whatever extent. And just, it's when you have the choice, oh my God, how much better does it feel?
Yeah. And that's where I think I'm also unique, because while I'm infertile and that wasn't a choice, I feel like I've finally taken charge.
Yeah.
Part.
Powerful.
One part. Only one part. But it's a part of my life that will affect me for the next 10 years. I may just be skipping menopause, also a bonus. You know, that'll sort of play out how it does. But, you know, like, why not take charge of your life when you can?
Yeah, exactly.
Years ago, I wasn't ready.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Like, life throws curveballs at us, but, like, what do we do with them? Do we let our life sort of be impacted by them and we're kind of, you know, the curveballs in charge? Or at what point do we go, do you know what, enough is enough and I'm taking charge of this. I'm going to make the tough decisions. I'm going to, you know, sort of, you know, I guess, I don't know a better word, but like kind of shut this down so then I can start controlling my life instead of, I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like every single year, getting a period every single month and knowing, like, it just would seem so fucking stupid. Like, why the hell is my body pretending that it's fertile when clearly it's not? Like, I can't imagine. It's almost like emotional abuse, psychological abuse every single month, every single year. I mean, I just can't. I'd be a mess.
Yeah. And I think when you've been trying to have a baby at times, as I was years ago, you have that, oh my God, I'm due on Sunday. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And then through stress and whatever else, you're a couple of days late and you think it's, oh my God, this is the month, this is the time, it's going to be amazing. Even when you know you cannot have a baby, even when you have not had sex for a month, you still go, oh my God.
Oh my God, maybe I am Mary.
His name's Jesus.
That's what I say. I say, no, wait, your name is Marie Louise. Your name is not Mary. But you still, it's because things you can't control, hormones, thoughts to a degree. You know, I'm working on all of that. I'm trying to change my thinking and my thought processes. I think as a woman, it goes straight back to what we said right at the start. This is what we were built to do, kind of. Or most of us were built to do it.
Biologically designed.
Can't help but think that way.
Wow. And then what about the other side of it as well? What about the insensitivity of people, of mothers who bitch about their children? Like, I know so many women who are like, I can't wait for them to go back to school. Oh my God, my kids drive me batshit crazy. Oh, who wants my child? I'm putting them up for adoption. Ha ha ha. Like, that stuff must seem so, like, you want to bitch slap someone in the face for it.
I do completely want to bitch slap. You can, what mothers don't realise is that we see everything and it's not an indictment on them per se, but I can set Facebook by clockwork. I know when the school holidays are anyway. No, first Monday of the school holidays, don't be on Facebook because it's already, I'm over these kids, can't wait for the holidays to be over, I'm sick to death of this. Then a day or two later, there'll be a supposedly funny post of free to a good home, 7-year-old child, I'll bring his toys with him, you can just take him off my hands. And it's like, you're a bitch.
Yeah.
It's not just me, but there are shitloads of women who would do that in a heartbeat, regardless of him having autism or Asperger's or ADHD or whatever situation we know your child has, because we're there for the good times as well. We know all about the achievements and the school photos and the going off to school camp and how exciting my son's off to his year 10 formal. We hear all of that stuff. But we don't say, hey, yeah, we'll take that kid. But we want to, because we would take the kid. Only we could. Not all of them, I've got to say. We are a bit fussy. And ideally we would have our own. But what it feels like is a carrot being dangled. And
yes,
we don't have enough shit coming at us in society. Not to say that it's deliberate, but it feels like we're up against a lot. And then we have our own family members and own friends who are doing the same thing. And some of them bloody well know the situation.
I've got such a big question to ask here. Can I ask, I get this a lot, and for some people I'm okay with them doing this and other people I'm really not, but do you ever get asked to babysit a lot?
I don't.
Oh, so lucky.
I think, no, I think I don't, because when my husband and I first got married, we had so many people asking us, when are you going to have kids? And we were like, nah, because we just didn't want the onslaught of questions. So we shut that shit down right away. We did such a good job that people didn't think we wanted kids. I didn't know what we were doing in the background. I didn't know any of the conversations. I didn't know we had names picked out and schools chosen and that we would argue over which school they were going to go to, or that we bought a house in a street with 3 schools. I didn't know any of that stuff because we shot it down so well. And now, no, I just don't get asked. And I think I've sort of shot myself in the foot because I did it so well that people don't know about any of this stuff and don't think that I even like kids.
I think there is also that assumption for a lot of women who can't have kids is that, oh, you must not like kids. It's like, no, it doesn't mean we don't like them.
I have children and I don't like other people's kids.
I love kids. I absolutely adore them. I just don't want them to come home with me at the end of the day and sleep in my house unless they're my family.
Or unless it's for a sleepover or whatever. You know,
as long as it's temporary.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? The other thing that I have found is something, and I don't think this has had anything to do with my infertility. I think this is just something that happens, but parents seem to think that you're going to adore their children and treat them like royalty because they're kids. Like, people be like, here are my kids, and you're expected to get down your knees and bow to them, and it's like, what? I don't get what's my role here? Because I'll take a child the way I'll take an adult on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
A bit of a chat and we get along, fine. If you're a little rat, then I'm not going to like you. Why would I? If you're treating your parents badly, if your parents treat, why would I?
Yeah.
Pull up and be excited about meeting a kid that I've heard only bad things about.
Before I had children, I remember being at I think we were at a wedding, and my sister-in-law at the time had just had a baby, and she walked over to me and she literally thrust this newborn baby at me, and she's like, oh my God, you haven't had a hold yet. And I didn't move, and she nearly dropped the baby on the ground. And she looked at me with absolute horror and judgment. And I just said to her, it's your baby, you hold it. And it's this expectation, just because I have a vagina and ovaries, that I must be like desperate to hold everyone's newborn babies. And it's not that, you know, like I've got children now and I like my children, but like you said, I don't like everybody else's children automatically at all. And I don't even go up and hug other people's kids. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I might not want to hug you. And I'll often say to one of my best friends, I keep saying to her, I really like your kids. And we've known each other for like 5 years now, and she always cracks up laughing. She's like, I kind of hope you do. And I'm like, no, but I really mean it. Because there's such
Just no, I don't give that accolade out to everyone.
And I don't. Like, if I don't said it to you, I probably don't like your children.
Exactly. And nor should you.
No.
Nor should you. And it should be a compliment. Being for giving out compliments, but they should be genuine at all times.
At all times.
At all times. And you know what? I come from a big family. My mum was one of 8. There are 32 grandkids on one side, and I don't know, there must be like 20 great grandkids on that side. So there are a lot of kids. I have 7 nieces and nephews. I lay claim to having never changed a nappy. And my like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there was always someone else around to do it. And why the hell would I put
Why should I?
What? I'm like, I know how to do it if I have to. There's cleaning, there's preparing, there's putting on. Maybe I won't get it right the first time, but I hope to never have to do that. I mean, that's one of the benefits of not having children.
And also, what about all the men in your family? Has every single man been expected to have changed a nappy, or is it just because you're a woman there, oh my God, you've never changed a nappy?
I think for the perception of other people, they think I should be doing it. But I can tell you that one of the people in my family who is there in a heartbeat is my brother.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're all fine with it. And I'm the youngest, and I didn't have to knock anybody out of the way to do it. And why would I? No thanks.
Most of us that have changed our own kids' nappies never wanted to change their nappies. Why would you want? I expect anyone else to do it.
I am sweet with not doing it.
I have had more than my fair share of nappy changing. So I have really young siblings who were like all born when I was just starting high school. I'm over it. That was more than enough for me. I consider that my own version of like child rearing.
I can see why.
Yeah. What 14-year-old wants to be sitting there changing nappies and cleaning up spit up?
Nope.
No, thank you.
Not even one who's had her own baby. And there are women girls who do have them that young. And they don't want to be doing it. They just want to be out having fun, I'm sure. So, no.
Pretty sure you're right there.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a 13-year-old daughter who actually changed my next door neighbour's daughter's nappy the other day, and but she got $30 for it. So she was like, "Hell yes! If I get paid $30 to change a nappy, I'm in."
I might change my mind now too if there's somebody paying
$30 a nappy.
$30 a nappy is not a bad rate.
I think it's a great rate.
How did they reach that dollar amount?
I don't know. I said, no, go back to our neighbour and tell her, no, it's too much. But our neighbour was like, hell no. She changed nappy, you know, she got them at the bath. She's like, oh, good. Like, she's earned that $30. I was like, okay, it's your money.
Beautiful. Good on her.
Marie Louise, sorry. Oh my God, I'm really not great with names
It's
today.
really hard.
Okay.
And it's actually Marie Louise to make it even.
Oh, Marie. Okay.
I know. It's the worst.
No, that's okay. I really am curious as how you actually handle the relationships now that you have, like, with people. Do people still get weird with you about it?
Yeah. What I've discovered this year is that me being so open about this is a real eye-opener for them, because so many women are used to keeping it secret, as I have, because, you know, you go to work and people are having babies and they're like, aren't you happy for her? I'm like, yes.
Totally.
And
Maybe.
I'm 100% happy for her, but I'm gutted for me. And at that moment, you have to be happy for them. And you do your best, and that's all fine. But then it almost feels like you've been lying all this time when you suddenly say, by the way, all that time I couldn't have them, and now I've made this bizarre decision to stop having them, to not be able to ever have them, and to get on with life and not be thinking about having them. And people don't really know how to handle that. I brought the idea of the business up with a couple of business chick friends that I know, and their reaction was unlike anything you've ever seen. My original question was about marketing of the new idea, and they went straight for, you're going to be shaming women. Women don't want to talk about that. There's no difference in dating when you're single to dating when you're single and infertile. It was bizarre, absolutely bizarre. And these are business chicks who are used to disrupting and going where people don't usually go, because, you know, mother is the, what is the thing? Mother is the nature, I mean, what is it?
It's the pinnacle of femininity,
Invention.
apparently.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, business people start businesses because they see a gap in the market. They see something that others don't see. Here I was going to them with this idea, and it somehow brought out all their issues.
Yeah.
And their insecurities. And by the end of the conversation, I was like, well, that wasn't the question I asked, but I got it, the answer I didn't even know I wanted. And that is to go for it. Because obviously they didn't have the support they needed. Family-wise, it's been very interesting because, of course, they had, you know, my sister said to me, I don't look at you as my sister who's infertile. I look at you as my sister who I can come to and talk to about things. And I'm like, still that sister, but for a while you maybe need to be a bit more aware that the topics that you bring up aren't what I want to hear, or that and will not give the answers I've previously given because I'm different now. I've made this massive decision, and part of that means not being the old me who was just happy to hear that somebody is pregnant. If that person's not in my immediate life, I wish them all the luck that they can have, but I don't need to know that information. So I would like people to be a bit more sensitive about that stuff. However, I'd also like them to be a bit more accepting of the decision and realise how difficult it was. And how difficult, even if you're not making a decision about shutting down physically, when you're shutting down hope, you really change your life. And I don't think people are quite on board with that yet, but they will be.
And I think that's why this is such an important conversation, though, because it really does open up this conversation about what happens when you accept that you're no longer infertile, and what does that mean, and not just for the person who's made that decision, such as yourself, but then how can the rest of us show up and support them, support you, support all these other women that are in the same boat and are experiencing, you know, the same things and decisions. And I remember, I mean, you and I have known each other for a while. You were telling me this story a while ago, which just mortified me to pieces, of a friend of yours that knew that you were experiencing infertility, and yet she asked you to come with her to have an abortion. And I mean, I just remember my jaw just dropping at the level of insensitivity. And like you were saying, you always felt like you had to be there to support people. But there's just some things that you just think people should have more sensitivity around. And it doesn't mean that you're not entitled to celebrate the birth of your child, or you're not entitled to ask for sympathy for having to face, you know, the decision of having an abortion at all. But just having the sensitivity of who the hell you share that information with, because of the shit it brings up for that person.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time mothers of mothers think that they should just not share any information at all with women like me. I know that from speaking with other friends and other women in the situation that invitations stop coming because they're like, well, she won't want to come to my child's christening because she can't have a baby. Or when she gets it, we just will stop talking about it. We'll change the subject. I mean, that's not cool. We still want to be involved, but we want to be able to not go if we don't feel up to it on the day. And we want you to not see it as a slight on your baby, or that we're not happy for you, or that, we're so jealous that we had to stay away. No, we're just heartbroken. And anyone who's been heartbroken over a man, putting it into that context, if you've just broken up with somebody that you loved and adored and had a mental future planned out with that person, and your best friend comes over to tell you that they're engaged, how are you going to take it? It's not going to go down well. It's not that you're not happy for them, but it's just shit timing, and you need time to deal with what you're dealing with and to heal from that. And along the way, you do tell people about what's going on, and sometimes it seems like they slam it back in your face almost deliberately. And that friend that you mentioned, that was a life-changing moment for me, because what happened was it was a Saturday morning. I received a text from her. We were very good friends. We lived near each other. We're in each other's pockets quite a lot, knew a lot about each other. Both were single. She was single and had not married. She'd been in a long-term relationship before I met her, but was not at that point. Wanted to have kids, loved kids, but she knew about my situation, and she sent me a text and said, I've picked up a day's work, but something's come up. I need you to do me a favour. And we were such good friends that I just said, yeah, of course, because that's what you do with your friends. And so what happened was that she sent me a text back and she said, I need you to pick up so-and-so from an appointment because I'm now working and I can't do it. And I sort of figured there are other people around. If she's picking me, she's gone through the list and I am the last person and she's that desperate. Because I didn't know this person who I was picking up. So I was like, well, you're going to go through the people who know that person first. And so I said, yep, cool, give me the address and I'm on to it. And she goes, great, here's the address. I've got to go back into work. I can't take any more calls or anything. I'm going to leave it with you. And so when I put the address into Google, I discovered that it was an abortion clinic. And I completely went to tears, became a mess immediately, because even though I'm pro-abortion and pro-choice, that was a situation, being fertile, that I never thought I would be in.
Yeah.
Because mentally you're gradually shutting things down as you go. And that was something that I never thought I'd have to worry about, because if I was to get pregnant, I would have wanted to keep it. And so there I was, faced with the choice of letting this poor woman down who's in a shit situation, who's made a decision for herself. I didn't know the circumstances, but good on her for being brave and making a decision for her life. And I want to support her because that's what you do. That's what we do. And I definitely like being a woman who supports other women. And so I remember sitting on the floor in my lounge room thinking, I have to get going almost straight away and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I texted a male friend of mine who knew my situation, and he's like, well, that's just it. You're just not going. You cannot go. I won't let you go. And he was just trying to be the friend and say, like, don't put yourself through this. It's okay to say no. And I said, I can't say no. I've said yes. And I had said yes, let's remember, to something I didn't know I was agreeing to. So then, of course, I rang my sister while I was driving, and I tried to talk to her and tried to get her to talk me through it. I just needed some bolstering. You have somebody in life who will pick you up, just it's a shit situation, but we're going to get you through it.
Yeah.
Just as I was helping this woman, I needed her to help me. And then I realised, hold on a second, she's in the car. She's on speakerphone. Are the kids with you? And her kids were in the car. And I was like, okay, this is even more fucked. I can't have this conversation with her while the kids are in the car. It's not their business. They're too young to be hearing about this sort of thing, because when you're an auntie, you also make these decisions. You know what you don't want to expose them to. And I also didn't want them to hear me in the state that I was in, because I was driving, I was fine, but I was really on the brink.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you want. I think they were like 14 and 15 maybe. They don't need to hear their auntie go
Falling apart, yeah.
And so I was like, are you in the car? Are you on speakerphone? And she said, yes. And I'm like, well, you kind of need to tell somebody that when you answer the phone. But of course, because of the state I was in, it didn't come out that way. It came out a lot more heightened. And that's caused a huge argument